how? Europe's self-destruction, Patrick Lawrence in an exclusive for Sheer post, all right? And Sheer Post is one of the Indie Media Award honorees for being one of the top outlets, so definitely go and subscribe to their newsletter and support them with a donation if you can. Like it, the stream, that's right. Make sure to share the link, like the stream, subscribe to our channel, all the platforms you listen. Like I said, we're everywhere. Thank you so much, Anthony, for reminding me of that. So, you've got everybody there at the opening of Nord Stream. This was back in 2011, and Dmitry Medvedev, who was the president of Russia at the time.
Wait, go back?
Yes.
Go back? Why does that middle guy look like he's like...
Hey, that guy looks familiar.
No, other middle guy. Other middle guy. Middle of the thing. No, yeah. Why does he look like that? Why does he have that face?
He's got
like,
toothy grin. Toothy grin,
like,
yes.
It's just like evil man grin. Like,
well,
anyway.
Sure. So, absolutely remarkable Western media's determination to ignore the recent Baltic Sea detonations, which knocked out the Nord Stream 1 and 2 pipelines. Again, this was from last week. A major piece of this was before Russia has come out now and accused England or UK of detonating and destroying the pipeline. So they're still speculating, and there still has been no official investigation that says it, but we're going to look at a little deeper as to how, why, and what. So again, major piece of Europe's energy infrastructure, joint property of Germany, Russia has been destroyed. Any chance Russian gas transmissions westward will be resumed is off the table. Continent now sent on a desperate search for new source of natural gas, inevitably at higher prices. Cannot think of many stories more significant. We've heard all this before, right? The Western press broadcasters have reported next to nothing about this monumentous development since the September 26th explosions. Wait, what? Because we've heard nothing but. Right? It's now clear that the media's silence reflects a larger silence. On October 14th, Reuters reported that Sweden has declined to participate in a joint investigation with Germany and Denmark. Wait, what? German television reported that the Danes also dropped out. So now we have a German minister stating that his government knows who's responsible for the attack, but he can't say who it is. In all three cases, the explanation is the same. The matter is too sensitive to pursue, and doing so risks, quote, national security. Right. So,
of course it does.
There will be no joint investigation of Nord Stream 1 and 2 incident. And whatever Sweden and the others may discover on their own, they have no intention of telling the world about it. One of the reasons why Russia's now come out and said this. Now, unless you're given a parlor games that never end, it's nearly impossible to avoid concluding that the U.S. was either directly responsible for sabotage or supervised those who were. If national security isn't an issue, it is plain that the Russians had nothing to do with it, and equally plain that the culpable entity is nominally allied with Germany but has no fundamental respect for its interests, of course. And it's not notable that Stockholm, that's Sweden, Copenhagen, Denmark, have decided to shut up about what happened off a Danish island close to Germany's Baltic Sea coast. Wait, what? It's shocking that Berlin has done so. I haven't heard about this either. Somebody just blew up a project worth $11 billion, $10.8 billion, that Germany, not dollars, but euro, that Germany, right, set in motion, and in which it has a majority share. And in effect, the Federal Republic has chosen to stand with what is almost certainly a state actor, as said actor impugned its sovereignty and destroyed not only its property, but also its energy sourcing alternatives. Yeah, that's pretty much what the German government is doing right now. So what are we looking at here? Well, my answer comes with a long story, of course, and that's Patrick Lawrence, who is one of the best. All right. And the truly big story Western media have left unreported. It's the story of how Europe has bowed supinely to America's dictates since the Cold War decades, even when this does the continent harm. And again, I don't think that this is much of a surprise, but lately it's a story of the disastrous toll the U.S.-led campaign against Russia via its proxy in Ukraine it's taking on European societies and economies, right? Now we must wonder whether the story that began long ago turns out to end with the destruction altogether of Europe as an independent pole of power with a voice of its own, and just as important in my mind, of Europe as an idea and an ideal. We are risking a massive deindustrialization of the European continent, Belgium's prime minister told the Financial Times recently. So, Europe's creeping economic ruin is the most immediate, tangible casualty in the war in Ukraine, the U.S. provoked, and the sanctions regime against Russia, the U.S. leads, and the European Union backs. Wow, that's a mouthful.
Mm-hmm.
Right? The nearly incredible refusal of Germany and its neighbors to stick up for themselves on the pipeline question suggests that the larger consequence is the final collapse of all pretense that Europe is other than a collection of vassal states now subservient to the U.S., even at the expense of their own citizens. Well, I don't know. Well, evidence seems to indicate
We're
that.
fucked.
Yeah, thank you, Misty. Okay, think about this the next time the Biden administration bangs on about the sanctity of Ukraine's sovereignty, right? And how they're literally silencing other countries from releasing an investigation about what's happening in the Baltic and what happened with Nord Stream because it would be an inconvenient truth. Wow. Sounds like a guy who might be locked up in Belmarsh has a similar issue. So he was long among those who wondered whether, with a certain measure of hope, when Europeans would speak up and act according to what they determined was the best for themselves. He spent decades at this. Yes, remembers thinking, continent is done with Cold War binary Washington forced on the world. Yes, we thought more recently, Europeans will refuse to support the sanctions Washington's imposed on Russia after the U.S. cultivated coup in Ukraine in 2014. German businesses didn't want them. The Greeks and Italians didn't either. When they came up for renewal every 6 months as required by EU rules, they went through anyway. How about that?
Of course they did.
Right? Then Macron came along. Yep. When he hosted the Group of Seven 3 years ago, the French president tried on his de Gaulle Act, declaring that Russia was inevitably part of Europe's destiny and the continent must find its own relationship with its vast eastern neighbor. Well, yes, I said again, failing to see that Macron is little more than a squeaky weather vane mounted grandly atop the European barn. No was the answer in these in many cases. Right? This topic came up again some years ago during an interview he did with Perry Anderson, who's a British writer and publisher. Why can't Europe find its voice? He had an interesting reply. The last generation of European leaders with any experience of acting independently of the U.S., Churchill, Anthony Eden, de Gaulle et al., etc., passed into history during the early part of the Cold War, he pointed out. Okay, so no generation since has experience other than its dependents sheltering under the American security umbrella. They know nothing else. They have never spoken in voices of their own. And this is not to say that Europe has been entirely at ease. By the mid-Cold War years, there were signs aplenty that Europeans were restive within the transatlantic relationship as Washington fashioned it. Right. De Gaulle, withdrew French forces from NATO command in 1963. That's, I believe he's talking about in Vietnam. 3 years later, he ordered NATO to close all its bases on French soil. All right. 3 more years after that, Germany premiered its Ostpolitik. Another year on, Willy Brandt became the first German chancellor to meet an East German, Willy Stoph. So it's not like they haven't gone against the U.S.'s wishes before. Let us not forget what was going on in the streets. If you do not understand, I don't know. I'm terrible with French, but the riots in 1968. Thank you. In Paris and everywhere, and I don't know, and elsewhere in part of protest against the American imposed world order. You don't understand 1968. Okay, again, but Washington, flush with its post-1945 primacy in global affairs, had learned well by this time how to coerce its friends with a toothy American grin and whatever was required by way of money, bribes, fixed elections, political subterfuge, and all the rest. It had a nasty gift for force-marching Europeans to keep them in line with the Cold War crusade, their barely submerged disquiet notwithstanding. Yep, so basically they would coup leaders that were going against them, destabilize the country, and put in a puppet dictator. Wow, Where have I heard that before? So,
Unity.
right. Thanks, Richie. Were those of us were those of us who wanted to see a freestanding Europe in its way a bridge between West and East so often disappointed? And so came my question to Perry Anderson only a few years ago. How come this? Right? And here we are with methane bubbling up in the Baltic Sea from what the BBC reports to be a breach of 50 meters, 164 feet Nord Stream. Aha. Assuming American culpability of one or another kind in this crime, as I do not care for parlor games, I make this assumption pending evidence. There's a straight line between Washington's capricious abuses of European sovereignty during the Cold War and the events of September 26th. A nation that licenses itself to intrude into Europe's affairs without more than murmured protests is a nation that will think little of wrecking an expensive piece of European infrastructure, especially when it has nothing to lose. And a continent that bowed down for decades during the Cold War is a continent that dares not say a word about it. So Europe's goose seems cooked on the energy side now. Saad Al-Kaabi, the Qatari energy minister, said October 18th with Financial Times that for Europe to go without Russian gas will doom it indefinitely to economic decline and widespread suffering. I think that might be a little self-serving, but if Russian gas flows into the EU, he said, I think the problem's going to be huge and for a very long time. If it does, or if it zero gas. I'm sorry. Yes, if zero Russian gas flows. So post Nord Stream Europe is now at the mercy of hard bargain contracts in the open market, where it will never match the price at which Russian gas would have flowed on the Baltic Sea to Germany. Or it can make agreements with Turkey, as Erdogan arranges with Moscow to turn Turkey into a depot for Russian energy exports. Let's put it this way. You don't want to buy a used car from the Turkish president, never mind a multi-billion-dollar energy supply. Okay, yeah. Erdogan's not a good dude.
Uh-huh.
All right, and leave it to the Americans. Macron, Robert Abchek, who is vice chancellor, and Abeck, and climate minister in the Scholz government, right? And other European leaders are already complaining that American natural gas, due to arrive at European terminals, is priced at 4 times higher than what it goes for in the U.S. market. Well, you have to ship it across the Atlantic Ocean, dude. Yeah, it costs money. It has been clear since the Nord Stream question broke out into the open during the Trump administration that capturing the European natural gas market from Russia was part of what drove Washington's vicious opposition to the completion of Nord Stream 2. We know this. I mean, look, Trump was opposed to it when Merkel signed the deal with Putin back at, I think it was 2017 or 2018. I remember that vividly. I mean, this is not just a Biden thing. I mean, both sides wanted to end this thing. So we have to think in larger terms to explain so bold a move as the Baltic Sea detonations. What happened? There's another part of this story that extends far back. As much as Washington feared the Russian bear, it fretted at least as much and possibly more about all those European impulses to achieve a stable settlement with the Sovs. Ostpolitik, what was called convergence, a third way, and under such notions, that's the true enemy was a threat greater than the Soviet Union. It was the gravitational pull of the Eurasian landmass and the perfectly logical thought that a sovereign Europe would find its destiny as its westernmost flank, meaning that they'd stop doing business with us. Preventing this by whatever means has been a submerged feature of Washington's transatlantic policy for decades. This is why a gas pipeline took on so immense a significance for the U.S. and why whatever means just computed out to gross international crime and a full frontal attack on European interests. Right? It's pretty stunning. To turn the gaze forward.
Well,
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to keep reading, so go ahead.
No, wait. Go ahead. I was just saying, like, this is the between that dirty bomb stuff that's been happening and like being claimed, and that what's happening in the Black Sea, right? With like British-led attacks on naval ships. Like,
Well, that's except
why
that
are we
no.
this close to like? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that supposedly no ships have been sunk. There was some kind of an attack on something, but they didn't get anything, and
No,
they're
no, we were only kidding. It's nothing. We no do nothing.
where the video? Right.
Like,
Yeah, but there was like drone stuff. Where's the
uh,
photography? Where's the footage? Okay, again,
yep.
to turn the gaze forward, the most discouraging aspect of Nord Stream incident is a tie between two grim realities. On the one hand, it seems clear now that the U.S. is emboldened to do anything it likes to the Europeans to preserve its power over them. And on the other, it seems just as clear that the Europeans will take it in the way of the Stockholm Syndrome. Great. But this is not the end of the story. Well, what a surprise. Patrick Lawrence is not known for writing short ones. I can't even speculate on whether or when Europe will produce a new generation of bolder leaders with thoughts of their own. This is the age of Liz Truss and Olaf Scholz. Now, of course, Truss resigned like days later.
Not
Liz Truss.
Yep.
But Rishi Sunak is no different, right? But looking further out, I do not see that the U.S. can bring history's wheel to a screeching halt, even if it looks just as if it just did. Macron was for once right when he asserted that Russia's destiny was with Europe, and Europe's in an interdependent relationship with it. This is history's lingerie, right? Plain and simple.
Lingerie.
Yeah, lingerie. It's the long game. All right. I've never heard any simple nation stopping it for more than a short while. All right. It's the long relationship.